Hello, I'm David Burgess, and I'm a cell biologist, a professor at Boston College. And I also happen to be an American Indian. And so I've been involved in science diversity efforts and trying to change the face of science and the opportunities for minority students and professionals throughout my career. And so today I'd like to talk a bit about for faculty members, how mentoring of students of color can go, and hopefully give you some tips on improving your relationships and your opportunities and your success at working with students of color. I think first and foremost, it's important to recognize that mentors come in all colors and genders and shapes and sizes. And minority students are no different than anyone else. They need mentors. They don't necessarily need one mentor. In fact, they need multiple mentors. And they need mentors who can help them in different stages of their careers. Because of the fact that they are underrepresented in the sciences, what that means is there are very few mentors of the same color, the same race or gender that they're able to interact with. And so these are some images of some of my mentors over my career, and I've been blessed by having these mentors. Now, mentors of minority students, again, are race neutral, they're gender neutral, but what they must do is listen to students and watch the students, and especially for stressors. And I'll talk about the kinds of stressors that are unique to underrepresented minority students in research universities today. At the same time, I think it's very critical for mentors to set high expectations for all of their students, and especially for underrepresented minority students. Again, recognize the need for more than one mentor. You're not in a competition with other mentors. It's an opportunity for you perhaps to work individually with a student, but also as a team. And finally, it's important for you to recognize issues of culture, because for some underrepresented minority groups, the community, their culture, their history, their relationships with family are very important and play a singular role in their lives. So again, why do we need multiple mentors? Again, I think it's clear as a PI of a student, you're a great mentor for professional development. You may not be a great mentor as a role model of being in the same race or gender. You may not be a great mentor in terms of social activities. And so different students require different mentors throughout their career. I also want to talk about and sort of educate you about the challenges that face underrepresented minority students in the sciences especially. And the biggest issue is the fact that most of them are solos. By solo, I mean generally they're the only minority student in their program. They're the only minority student in their laboratory, the only minority student perhaps in their whole school. And so these lead to certain issues. And the issues are numerous. They have to do with issues of the expectation that you represent an entire race rather than as an individual. So keep that in mind, that these are individuals with their own perspectives, and there is no sort of what's the American Indian perspective on this issue. The other issue is social isolation. Again, here's a picture of a study section at NIH I was on a while back, and you see this is a typical study section, which is mostly men, a few women, but little diversity. And so if you're there, you're generally a solo, whether you're a graduate student or far along in your professional career. Minority students face something called stereotype threat, and I recommend that you Google that and read about stereotype threat, because it's well documented that stereotype threat is a big issue for students of color. Isolation from networks. There's a good amount of data showing that underrepresented minority faculty in medical schools tend to be excluded from big center grants or big program project grants, leading to lower productivity. And there's no real explanation of why that occurs, but the fact is it does occur. There are things about behavior that affect minority students, and behavior, for instance, one type of way of communicating by one group might be highly regarded and highly respected, being aggressive, being assertive. But if you're a black woman or a black man as a graduate student and you are assertive and aggressive, you might be considered to be uppity. And so there are different standards that minority students face. There still is both overt and covert racism that rears its ugly head from time to time. All of these are isolating events and occurrences that happen to students and professionals throughout their career, leading to an effect on their productivity, on their spirit, on their health. And so we have to watch out for these solo effects. At the same time, we have to recognize that the US demographics are changing. When we look at the future of this country, it's increasingly diverse, especially in the K-12 pipeline and those students who are heading to college and graduate school. Hispanics are the largest minority group in the country, and so the demographics are changing, and so the face of science will change or will struggle to keep up its resources. And so we have to pay attention to the opportunities that are provided to us. I think one thing that's important to recognize and to communicate with your students is that there are great opportunities for underrepresented minority students in the sciences. They run the gamut from having grant programs targeting to underrepresented minority groups run by private philanthropies or different NIH or NSF programs. There are friendly program officers out there who would and very much like to diversify their study sections, their initial review groups or their panels. And so there are opportunities that will provide you some extra experience, provide young professionals experience because they happen to be an underrepresented minority. But in many ways that will help them in their career, how to write a grant better. There are also, most professional scientific societies have very active minority affairs committees or minority action committees. I'm a member of the one at the American Society for Cell Biology. It runs workshops on professional development, grant writing, how to get a job, how to get tenure, all of these kinds of activities. And this is an image from our recent workshop this last June. And so there are lots of opportunities provided, including minority-serving scientific societies. For Hispanics and American Indians in this country, there's the Society for Advancement of Chicanos and Native Americans in Science, a mentoring organization focusing primarily on undergraduates, but having activities and programs for both postdocs and young professionals. So we need to take advantage of these opportunities provided to students and to young professionals. Again, I want to go back to issues of culture and how important it is for many communities. And I know this is true for all underrepresented groups. Here are some images of me and one of my sons and a couple of grandchildren going to a recent powwow or taking part in a song at a national meeting or just getting together with other American Indian scientists. Because in fact we're so rare, we tend to know one another personally, and so we go away to a scientific meeting and we see each other and we get together. So it's a way of networking and staying in touch with your community. I think the other thing that I recommend is to celebrate success. It's so critical to celebrate success because for many of these students, they're the first in their family, first generation to go to college, and certainly the first to go to graduate school, or the first to get an academic or industry job as a minority in their family. And so this opportunity to achieve, they have no role models from their families, few role models in society, and so we need to celebrate their successes. And here's a great successful mathematician, Richard Tapia, member of the National Science Board and National Academy of Sciences, receiving an award for outstanding science at a recent SACNAS meeting. All right, well, I hope that this short narrative has given you some tips and some opportunities to think about the issues facing underrepresented minority students and young faculty and mid-career faculty that will allow you to be a better mentor and to work better with your students, leading to their successes. Thank you very much.